In 2003, Pixar traveled to the depths of the ocean with Finding Nemo, which quickly became one of the animation studio's many classics. 13 years later, a sequel finally came in the form of Finding Dory.
I remember them, my mom, my dad. I have a family.
Spanning the entire ocean, we run into quite a few interesting characters, but the question is always present: which characters are the most good, which are the most evil, and which are somewhere in between?
No eating here tonight.
Dory.
You're on a diet.
Now, we know that nature is pretty cruel, and most animals are just doing what they need to do to survive. But within the context of these two films, these underwater animals have the ability to tell right from wrong. So, how does morality play out under the sea? Hey, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge. Just keep swimming, because this is Finding Nemo and Dory, Good to Evil.
I shall call him Squishy and he shall be mine.
As usual, we'll be starting with the good characters and working our way down, starting with the most pure. Alright, I'm pretty sure the comment section would call for my head if I didn't place Dory at the #1 spot. Dory has got to be the kindest, friendliest, and most optimistic fish in the whole sea.
When life gets you down, you know what you gotta do?
I don't want to know what you gotta do.
In their first encounter, she decides to help Marlin follow the boat without a second thought, although she quickly forgets who Marlin is or where they're going.
You got a problem, buddy? Huh? Do you?
Though Marlin often fails to heed her advice, she turns out to be right most of the time, such as trying to swim through the trench and not over it, and speaking to the whale. She also helps reunite Nemo and Marlin by the end of the film. In her own movie, Finding Dory, she manages to track down her parents after a long journey of hopping around between exhibits and traversing pipes in the Marine Life Institute. When they do meet, she realizes that even though she forgot her parents for a time, she always loved and missed them in the back of her mind. While her short-term memory loss causes her problems, she's one of the only fish that can read, meaning that she's still very intelligent.
Sydney!
She does have one notable moment of very poor judgment in her own film, when she impulsively rushes into an underwater shipwreck without any sort of plan of finding her parents, and ignores the crabs who are telling her to shush.
These crabs are locals, and I get the feeling they're shushing us for a reason.
This leads to the trio almost becoming lunch for a giant squid. It was certainly a reckless action, but she more than makes up for it with how helpful she is to those around her.
I can fix it. I can. I'll go get help.
Coming in second place with the silver medal for good has to be Crush the Sea Turtle. He practically saves Marlin and Dory's lives after they make it out of the jellyfish horde, and then helps them navigate the East Australian current to reach Sydney. He's laid back, positive, and a loving and encouraging father to his son, Squirt.
You so totally rock, Squirt!
Before Crush sends him on the ride of his life, he teaches Marlin the importance of letting kids learn from their experiences and not being an overbearing parent, which is one of the central themes of the film.
How do you know when they're ready?
Well, you never really know, but
He also returns in the sequel to bring Marlin, Nemo, and Dory all the way to California. All in all, Crush is one righteous dude.
righteous!
In third place, we have to put Dory's parents, Charlie and Jenny. These films are no strangers to parents who will go to great lengths to protect their kids, and Dory's parents are no exception. In flashbacks, we can see Charlie and Jenny trying to prepare Dory for the life ahead in a loving and nurturing way. They never seem to be frustrated when dealing with Dory's condition and are very patient with her.
Not everything in life is easy to do, isn't that right, Charlie?
Though there is a scene in which Dory's mother is crying because she's afraid that Dory may not be able to survive on her own, given her condition. They clearly raised Dory well enough for her to be able to make her way through the whole ocean twice just to find someone. Even though she doesn't remember the source, Dory learned to just keep swimming from her parents, a motto which saves hundreds of fish at the end of Finding Nemo.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming,
swimming.
Most importantly, they never give up on the hope of seeing their daughter again. They escape the Institute and place shells that they know Dory will be able to follow right back to them. Because of Dory's propensity to wander across the ocean, this is probably the safest thing they could have done in their search for her. The most heartwarming scene comes at the very end of the film, when Dory remembers her parents' encouraging words, "You can do whatever you put your mind to."
You can do whatever you put your mind to, Dory.
Charlie and Jenny stand out as parents in a series that's largely about parenthood. Next, we're gonna place Nemo's teacher, Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray is a very knowledgeable educator and scientist who loves to sing about the subjects he's teaching.
Migration, migration, let's learn about migration.
He teaches children through first-hand experience, taking them to areas like the drop-off to observe the marine environment, which is a good method of teaching. He's very protective of his students and is quick to hide them from the divers when they come to the reef. He's also very patient with Dory and doesn't discourage her from trying to help assist in teaching the class, up until she mistakenly tries to give that talk to a bunch of small children.
When two fish love each other.
And we'll stop right there.
I suppose that Nemo and his friends do swim off without Mr. Ray knowing, but nothing bad happens until Marlin shows up and makes a scene, so Ray isn't at fault for that.
Oh my gosh! Nemo's swimming out the sea!
Moving on to the titular character, we have Nemo. In the first film, Nemo is constantly trying to prove to his dad that he's not helpless, despite Marlin's constant hovering.
Dad, you're not gonna freak out like you did at the petting zoo, are you?
His father's attitude causes Nemo to act out in defiance, which leads him to being captured by the divers, and the rest of the movie ensues. When he first reaches Sydney, Nemo is terrified, as any child taken away from his home would be. However, he quickly learns from the tank gang that he's stronger and braver than he ever knew. Though the first attempt at escape fails and Nemo is almost killed, he proves his capability by taking out the tank's filter, all by himself on his second try.
Sharkbait, you did it!
Nemo also saves Dory and hundreds of other fish using the swim down technique he learned from the tank gang by the end of the film. In Finding Dory, Nemo convinces his father that to find Dory, they'll have to think like Dory, which turns out to be exactly what they needed. When he does tell his father that he hates him, out of anger, he rectifies this by the end of Finding Nemo.
Dad, I don't hate you.
He's a great kid that is very kind-hearted, clever, and fearless. We're gonna place Marlin just below his son in the good tier. He's one of the most dedicated fathers in all of cinema. Marlin battles anglerfish, sharks, and jellyfish, swims through shipwrecks, trenches, and minefields, and hitches rides with turtles, a whale, and a pelican, just so that he has a shot of rescuing his son from the divers who stole him.
What's a dentist? What is that? Nigel, get in there!
Obviously, his actions speak for themselves. However, his personality is a bit more complicated to judge. Due to the trauma of losing his wife and nearly all of his children, Marlin starts off as a very overprotective helicopter father to Nemo. He tries to keep Nemo out of school for longer than he should, pesters the very qualified teacher about watching Nemo closely, and doesn't let his son swim off on his own or explain himself once Marlin catches him on the drop-off.
It's just a good thing I was here. If I hadn't shown up...
It's pretty clear that these actions stem from fear instead of parental love, and that Marlin doesn't believe that his son is capable of being without him. He also refuses to take any of Dory's advice until his actions result in her getting hurt, even though she turns out to be right most of the time. Thankfully, by the end of the first film, Nemo proves that he is capable of heroic actions, and Marlin finally realizes that his son is more than ready to take on life in the ocean.
I can do this!
You're right.
That doesn't stop Marlin's impatience and frustration from slipping through every now and then, as we see in Finding Dory when he tells Dory to go wait over there and forget. It's what you do best.
Go wait over there and forget. It's what you do best.
Despite his often down-in-the-dumps outlook, Marlin crosses the ocean and battles all manner of dangers to save the ones he cares about multiple times. So, he definitely belongs with the good characters.
Do I taste good? You tell him I'm not interested in being lunch.
Next, we have Dory's childhood pipe pal, Destiny. Destiny is one of the new characters introduced in Finding Dory, in which she plays an important role.
Dory!
Yes.
You and I were friends!
No.
Not only does she remember Dory after all these years she spent outside the Marine Life Institute, but she's also ready to help her old friend at a moment's notice, even jumping out of her exhibit and into the ocean to chase after a truck full of fish. That's quite a bit of dedication for someone she hasn't seen in years.
Time for your idea.
Okay, what idea?
For the tank gang, we're gonna split them up into two groups. We've decided to do this because everyone in the tank basically shares the same screen time, and they all act as one unit despite their differing personalities. The first group consists of Peach, Deb, Jocks, and Gil. Peach is the nicest member of the gang, as seen when she comforts Nemo after the first failed escape attempt.
Gil, Don't make him go back in there.
She can also read, and since she has the best view, often tells the other fish in the tank what's happening in the dental office. Deb doesn't have very many lines, but she seems to be friendly from what we see, although seeing her talk to her sister is a bit off-putting.
Don't listen to anything my sister says. She's nuts.
Jocks is essentially the tank's custodian, but we don't see a lot of his personality aside from just being French. Gil is the tank's leader and the most three-dimensional character of the whole group. He's pretty stoic in his first encounter with Nemo, but he's simply trying to teach the kid about independence.
Calm down. Now, alternate wiggling your fins and your tail.
Gil officially inducts Nemo into the club so that they can work on an escape plan and save him from Darla, but the rest of the tank groans at his idea of escape because his plans always fail. While the first attempt almost succeeds, the filter starts running again at the last second, and Nemo is almost killed. Gil admits that he was too eager to leave the tank and put Nemo in harm's way and apologizes, showing that he truly cares about Nemo and doesn't see him as simply a method of escape.
I'm sorry I couldn't get you back to your father, kid.
Afterwards, we see just how much Gil truly cares when he launches himself onto Darla's head to allow Nemo the chance to get back to the ocean. That's it for the first half of the gang. We'll talk about the rest of them a bit later down the list.
Find a happy place, find a happy place, find a happy place!
This may be a controversial entry, but we're putting Nemo's mother, Coral, on the sort of lower end of the good tier. Look, now I know some people are definitely gonna groan at applying some level of real-world science to a movie about talking fish intended for children, but there are multiple reasons why Coral did the worst thing possible when facing the barracuda. Clownfish live in an anemone that stings all outside threats to either stun or kill them. If Coral had actually just gone back into the house like Marlin said, the barracuda would have either followed her and gotten killed, or it would have swam away because it's a predator and it doesn't see anything to eat that's moving around.
Coral, get inside the house, Coral.
Instead, she rushes to protect their eggs, which draws the barracuda's attention to her and them, and they all get devoured. So what does this say about her morality? Well, obviously, she cared about her kids, and she was willing to give her life to protect them, which would make her a good, loving mother.
Just think in a couple of days, we're gonna be parents.
Clearly, she didn't mean for anything bad to happen to them, but that doesn't mean she made a good decision. It was a split-second reaction caused by motherly instinct. In short, while we believe what she did was the wrong move, her heart was obviously in the right place and wanting to protect her kids. Next, we have Nigel. Nigel's a bit of an interesting case. As a pelican, he's a natural predator to fish, but he's also capable of being friendly towards them. He's friends with everyone in the tank gang, becomes friends with Nemo, and saves Marlin and Dory from a flock of seagulls and helps them reach the dentist office.
Hey, I found his dad!
I wonder how he comes to terms with eating other creatures, or just as sentient as he is. Well, at least he apologizes to Nemo, just in case he ever tried to eat him before. Fish gotta swim, birds gotta eat.
Sorry if I ever took a snap at you. Fish gotta swim, birds gotta eat.
Nigel is a nice guy to everyone, except seagulls, so he still deserves a spot amongst the good characters. Moving back to Finding Dory, we have Bailey. Bailey is a beluga whale with the natural ability of echolocation, but for whatever reason, either a mental block or he's just faking it, he can't seem to use it until Dory convinces him otherwise.
I feel stupid.
Bailey.
Sorry.
He uses his ability to help Dory navigate through the pipes of the Institute and to keep track of the truck on its way to Cleveland.
My life's a rainbow! Can you see me?
He also provides encouragement to Destiny when she believes she won't be able to make the jump out of her enclosure. Bailey gets placed lower than Destiny simply because he's clearly being dramatic about his injury.
Please keep it down over there. My head hurts.
Next, we have the sneakiest sequel character, Hank the Octopus, or Septopus, depending on how you look at it. Hank actually starts off as kind of a selfish jerk who only cares about helping Dory so he can go to Cleveland and live out the rest of his days in isolation. He's not looking for small talk or a new friend. All he cares about is a tag on Dory's arm.
Your tag!
Hey man, don't touch my tag.
However, after an extended stealth mission and Dory calling him out for being a jerk, Hank does come to like Dory and decides to help her out of the kindness of his 3 hearts.
Someone with 3 hearts shouldn't be so mean.
Hank also rescues Dory from quarantine and helps her drive the truck full of fish bounding down the highway. By the end, it seems he's still a bit of a grump who probably doesn't have the patience to deal with a whole class of school children, but at least he's trying to help his fellow sea creatures rather than isolate himself himself from the rest of the world.
Time for another. Don't touch me. Time for another lesson.
We say he's still a good guy, despite his attitude. And finally, at the tail end of the good section, we have the blue whale. While he doesn't have any lines that we can understand, Dory is luckily here to interpret for the audience.
I think he says we've stopped.
The whale carries Marlin and Dory in his mouth all the way to Sydney Harbor, and while Marlin is afraid that he plans to eat our duo, the whale turns out to be telling the truth and blows them right where they need to go. We can't really be sure of his intentions, but if we're to believe what Dory says, it's certainly nice of him to help two total strangers.
Thank you, sir.
Now, we're gonna head into the more neutral depths of the ocean, down to the gray area. First up, we have the other half of the tank gang, Gurgle, Bloat, and Bubbles. These three fish are a bit more questionable than their friends. Gurgle is a total germaphobe and always seems to be nervously worrying about something.
He hasn't been decontaminated yet.
He never thinks any of Gil's plans will work, although not without reason, but he's still a pessimist. Bloat seems to be the exact opposite of Gurgle, in that he's far more laid back and doesn't care about cleanliness in the slightest. The two of them get into screaming matches over trivial things like which tool that the dentist is using.
I'll go deflate him.
Bubbles, on the other hand, is a different case altogether. He has an unhealthy obsession with, well, bubbles, scarily resembling an addiction. He's capable of normal speech, as shown in the film, but he has trouble controlling himself when he's near any type of bubbles. Gil shows that this is an unfortunate side effect of living in a tank for so long, even though Bubbles was born at a pet store. In the end, they still help to save Nemo from Darla and get back to his father, so they're definitely capable of good actions.
He did it! I'm so happy.
Next, we have the strangest sea lion in Finding Dory, Gerald. Gerald doesn't seem to be much more than simple comic relief, and the only plot-relevant thing he does is give his pail for Becky to carry Marlin and Nemo into the Marine Life Institute.
Gerald, you lost your marbles. Don't get used to it, Gerald.
It's never really explained why the other sea lions dislike him. Come on, guys. All he wants to do is lay on the rock. Just below Gerald are the sea lions that are actually capable of talking, Fluke and Rudder. While Marlin initially warns Nemo that sea lions are predators, these two seem like the least threatening predators in the whole series.
They could pounce at any moment.
They help Marlin and Nemo get inside the Institute, if only to stop them from interrupting their nap.
You interrupted my favorite dream.
Is that the one about you laying on this rock?
All that said, we just don't understand why they're such jerks to Gerald, so that knocks him down slightly. Back again to Finding Nemo, we have the moonfish. The moonfish are more of a collective group than a character, but one fish, voiced by John Ratzenberger, acts as their mouthpiece.
Is this guy bothering you?
They don't seem to want to help Marlin in the slightest when he asks them for directions, but they are happy to cheer up Dory after Marlin makes her cry.
What's that what I played? Give me directions.
They continue to mock Marlin, but after Dory explains their situation, they're willing to point the duo towards Sydney. They're undeniably helpful, and they just want Marlin to loosen up a bit, but maybe they could have done without the name calling.
Clown boy, let the lady get.
And finishing off the gray area are our trio of sharks, Anchor, Chum, and Bruce, in that order.
Why trust a shark, right?
Anchor earns the top spot simply because he's the only shark who didn't eat or try to eat his fish friend. Chum, on the other hand, most likely did, and Bruce certainly tries to. What's interesting about these sharks is that they're trying to defy nature by never eating fish, and have created a support group dedicated to that premise.
You're an inspiration to all of us.
Bruce struggles with overcoming his nature, however, as the smell of blood sends him into a mindless feeding frenzy.
Just a bite. You ought to get him, mate.
Yeah, he tries to kill the protagonist, but cut him some slack. He never even knew his father.
Never knew my father.
Come here.
Anchor and Chum do try to restrain him, but it takes detonating an entire minefield to scare the sharks off.
Is the party over?
Apparently, as the end of the film shows, they're safe enough to be around schools of fish children, so maybe they deserve to be a bit higher up. After all, if not for Bruce forcing them to go to the meeting, Marlin and Dory would have never found the mask that leads them to Nemo. You know, I'm not gonna swim by them though.
We just wanted to make sure that our newest member got home safely.
Next up, we have Darla. Obviously, as a child, Darla isn't really capable of doing evil things on purpose, but some of her behavior is still pretty concerning. She seems to be pretty spoiled both by her uncle and most likely her off-screen parents. She also enjoys the fish in her uncle's tank and likes to receive them as gifts. The tank gang knows what will happen to Nemo if he falls into her hands, so they vow to protect him from her clutches.
She wouldn't stop shaking the bag.
Now, when it comes to her fish-killing actions, I really don't think the "she's too young to know better" applies here. She's 8 years old, not a toddler. At the very least, someone should have told her to take care of her fish the right way. And maybe one day she'll have a Sid Phillips moment where all the fish collectively surround her and scare the crap out of her until she realizes that her habits kill sentient fish.
Fishy! Wake up! Wake up!
Now, as we move into the bad territory, just keep in mind that the standard for bad is a bit different compared to other good to evil lists because of the natural setting. These entries mainly stem from them being antagonists of the story. However, that doesn't mean they don't do bad things within the movies. Just below his niece is the dentist, Dr. Philip Sherman. P. Sherman actually seems like a pretty nice guy on the surface. He's enthusiastic about his work, a caring uncle to his niece, and he loves his fish. Maybe a bit too much.
Must have left your present in the car, sweetie.
If you'll indulge a bit of theorizing, allow us to explain why the dentist may actually be worse than you think. Nemo and company live on the Great Barrier Reef, which is partially protected from fishing by Australian law. Since we get a clear view from above the water of exactly where Nemo lives, and there's absolutely no land in sight, it's possible that Nemo lives in a protected area in which fishing would be illegal. If we go with that possibility, then that makes the good doctor, by any legal definition, a poacher. Aha! I finally got you, P. Sherman, for the criminal that you really are! But seriously, even if none of that is true, which it probably isn't, Dr. Sherman claims that he rescued Nemo because he didn't think the young clownfish would survive on his own, and that his diving expedition saved Nemo.
I found that guy struggling for life out in the reef, and I saved him.
So if that's true, why on earth would he give a young and weak clownfish to his niece who killed the last fish he gave her?
You're her present. Oh, shh. It's our little secret.
For a guy who cares about fish, he doesn't mind giving them to a fish killer. Oh, and he's pretty rough with his dental patients too, including the Prime Minister of Australia. Yeah, that might be worth mentioning. Let's start off with the predators. That includes the barracuda, anglerfish, seagulls, and giant squid. Good and evil probably don't even exist as concepts of these creatures. They are, as Bruce puts it, mindless eating machines.
I am a nice shark, not a mindless eating machine.
They don't seem to have the intellectual capacity of the other animals to even understand right and wrong, and they only exist to be monsters looking to turn our heroes into tasty snacks. We won't fault them for simply wanting a meal. However, if all that they do in the story is try to eat the protagonist and nothing else, then that certainly doesn't make them good people, if you can even consider them people.
Don't eat me.
And now, topping our list of the bad and the only characters who undeniably qualify as bad, we have the crabs. They're aggressive, territorial, and just downright rude.
Hey, this is our spot. Go on, get out of here.
Not only do they yell at anyone who comes near their spot, even if they're just passing through like Marlin, but they also try to catch and presumably eat Nemo. Dory has to literally threaten one crab's life to get him to tell her and Nemo where Marlin went, which is as simple as saying, he went that way.
All right, I'll talk. He went to the fishing ground.
Of the sentient creatures in both movies, these ones are the most selfish and worst-tempered, so they earn the #1 spot of the worst.
But I'm not telling you where he went, and there's no way you're gonna make me.
But what do you think? Who do you think are the most good and evil characters under the sea? Let us know. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, movies, and shows. But most importantly, stay wicked.